Are we live? We are
Setup is
live, I
live.
guess. Welcome to our first, or my first, stream on YouTube. And today we want to talk about Toni, what it is, how the name came to be, and how we are at this point in time where we are now. And the whole idea was a idea from Sahaj Surup. And can you tell something about the general idea?
Well, I guess it's something that we've talked around at most like tech conventions, Linaro Connect and other places like that. There has been some other variants of ARM device on a USB stick, and so my basic reason was I had this board laying around, and it was still cumbersome to like hook up UART to it and stuff like that. And the idea was to, just add like a UART USB stick right onto the actual board, plug it in, and you get a UART instantly. And it's much more portable this way. It doesn't need a battery, doesn't need anything else, just powered from USB. And then the idea started floating around that, well, if you have a system like this, it would be very easy to test your code directly on an ARM hardware without actually having all the complex setup of a dev board. Now, for some people, that's complex. People like us are used to it mostly, but it's a nice portable way to do it. You're on a train, you're on a flight, just plug it in, and you can debug your ARM code on an actual ARM platform. And that's sort of where the idea originated from, and then we did a bunch of discussions on it.
Right. And this prototype is based on a CH340 USB to serial converter, and it runs with a Litchi Pi Zero, which is a 32-bit hardware float design. And there are also more. Um, there are already like products you can get for your Raspberry Pi Zero. This one is basically a add-on board which exposes the USB OTG port. It doesn't have it doesn't include the connection for serial for debugging, but you can use it as a USB OTG device like Ethernet and stuff. The only disadvantage is that you have your Raspberry Pi Zero, and that one is only ARMv6, and it also 32-bit. So modern software design with Arch 64-bit is off the table with it. The the normal Raspberry Pi can't do that. It doesn't have a OTG port, and it also doesn't have a dedicated USB serial port. You can use the Raspberry Pi compute module with such a breakout board, but this one is like really huge. So we were looking at multiple designs, and if we like had existing hardware with a Nano Pi Neo or Banana Pi and stuff, but basically we haven't found a very suitable existing hardware from manufacturers.
Yeah, I'd say that's about right. Most of the small form factor ones are very low power and are not even something like the Pi 3 and stuff like that. But the small form factor ones usually come in like a single V7 chips that have the memory inbuilt, and that's not a lot of memory as well to begin with. So we did need a custom solution.
Yeah, and most of the boards we had were in a more square form and doesn't have a USB Type A port. Um, so you like have to use USB OTG and stuff, and you don't have USB serial and USB OTG exposed at once. And at the time, Geppetto, which is a web-based software where you can design or drag and drop your own components onto a PCB, had a like marketing thing where you can design your own Raspberry Pi compute module based board, and you only have to pay for manufacturing and the parts, but no upfront cost, which is normally 2,000 US dollars. Right. We have here our board design in Geppetto. We had multiple live streams discussing what we want as features and how we would like do it. It's basically, you can drag and drop the components onto it. I can increase or decrease the size of the PCB rather easily, or move components around. And it automatically gives you like connections you need to do. So we had like it gave us a bit freedom in designing the board. So you can have parts you want to add, like you can just go here into the categories and go into headers, etc. You can drag them here down. So we were looking at what we want. We have the Raspberry Pi compute module, which we had firstly in mind the light connector. So you can have a micro SD card slot and don't need to flash multiple software versions or OSs over if you do like very low level stuff. Like you can just exchange the SD card easily. And it also has all the features we wanted built into, like a USB hub, which is necessary to connect both the USB OTG from the Raspberry Pi compute module and the USB serial onto one USB A plug. We have also added a micro USB jack, which is to provide additional power if the USB device connected or the host device is not able to provide enough current to the board.
Yeah, I think
Do
the
you have?
on
Yeah.
Tor, I mean, A13, I was just going to also add, as part of the development experience using the Geppetto tools, it was interesting in that not only did they, afford us in the developer ecosystem Discord server the opportunity to work together and watch you guys evolve this live during that free trial period, but it was a symbiotic relationship in that you guys found a few soft spots or shortcomings in the product.
Right. So like while designing the board, we found some, can we call it bugs in the designer, etc. And we had a very, very close relationship to one employee at Geppetto, which was really helpful and nice. Like we just asked him and we had help in 1 hour or so, which was great. And that was all enabled by the direct conversation on the Discord server, the developer ecosystem server. Matthew asks, don't you have to target ARM versions independently? For example, ARM v7 stuff won't work on ARM v6, and ARM v6 will be slow, won't benefit from the ARM v7 advantages.
Well, I don't exactly understand, but what the question is. But if you basically have a sock like the Pi 3.1 or any other V8 sock that has ARM V7 built capabilities as well, so it can do both 64 and 32. You can run code from anywhere from ARM V6 and up. I think even ARM V5, I'm not entirely sure. But so if you have the 64-bit sock, you can pretty much test code for V6, V7, and V8, unless you are doing some kernel level or bootloader level stuff. Then you might want like architecture specific things. But for mostly user applications, the 64-bit ARM runs pretty much everything V8 and below.
Right. So we designed the Raspberry Pi, the board around the Raspberry Pi compute module. Later, we had requests to add functionality to add the capability to flash the compute modules with eMCC on it, which was implemented last minute, as well as some GPIOs and SPI header, which would be or will be used
So,
to add Wi-Fi modules.
so how's the eMMC flashed? What's the way to do that? Is it
So
over the same USB port?
yeah, it's over the same USB port. You basically force it to boot from USB, and then
Okay.
the Raspberry Pi Foundation offers a tool which is, as far as I know, loaded into RAM and then exposes the internal flash as or MCC at your PC as drive. So you can use Edge, DD, etc. to add that image onto. There are two ways to do it. Basically, you could delete one file on the bootloader partition, or you have a jumper to enable that. So there was a bit of a mistake while manufacturing, but that should be solved in revision 2. So currently, our first batch or alpha boards need to do some hand soldering to enable that functionality.
Is it even an alpha board if it's perfect?
Well, kind of.
Pre-alpha.
Yeah.
And yeah, right. Where are we at? I got distracted for a minute. Right. So one of the benefits of using the Raspberry Pi compute module is that there are already so many resources available for it. Like you can really dive deep into the whole Linux stuff with the Raspberry Pi based hardware, especially because like many people use the Raspberry Pi. They are not really standard, but because they're used so often, they kind of become a standard by themselves. Yeah. And it's exciting to see like the feature set developing and expanding over time, and it's nice that we added the SPI header as well. That one was requested by people who would like to use it for a kind of Wi-Fi enabled module, and you can add a SPI module from Microchip to it, which has mainline Linux support. So you don't really have to worry with it. The nice thing is that they supply you with drivers and user space drivers as well. David, do you have something to add?
Tor, I would say also just, I don't know if we've gotten to that part yet, but as we then completed the design and looked to who could manufacture or do the first run, right? You could talk a little bit about, our friends in the fruity world of Raspberry Pi and whatnot.
Yeah, right. So we like looked into the possibilities of manufacturing a hardware with a similar approach, but with a other SoC, for example, and have like other SoCs and hardware, but having the basically the same concept. We try to contact the Orange Pi, who do have the capabilities for manufacturing, but the prices were out of our scope. So for the current time, we stick with the Raspberry Pi compute module. It's not a difficult design, and I will be certainly working in the future to minimize the bill of material and also make the whole design simpler and as much as it is possible, even smaller. We don't have the hardware yet, but Geppetto has like this 3D view where you can have a preview on how the board looks like, and you can export a STL file. Another person I know printed it for me. It's not great, but it gives you a rough idea of how large is it. It's certainly not very small, but if you compare it to like the extension board for the compute module, it's smaller, like 1/3 of the space required. And
do you have the case handy?
Yeah, I have the case as well. I'm just fighting a bit with my camera. And we also have a case for it. And it actually kind of fits, so you can plug in or put in Toni. You can't really see it because of the same filament. And then you can top it off and screw it together, and you have it encased, which gives more stability on the USB-A port. And on the bottom, we have a hole for the switch for the USB boot, so you can flash your eMCC if you want to. Obviously, you can always boot from SD card, and using a Raspberry Pi compute module Lite is also cheaper. So if you don't want to spend extra money on the included storage, you don't have to.
A13, I just wanted to mention, when we did do our investigations into suppliers from overseas in China, the prices were good. It was the minimum order quantities. I think we were looking at 1,000. So, if others are interested in developing them, this is where Geppetto and Gumsticks was also very useful, because though the price was somewhat higher, we could order in quantities of literally a half a dozen or 6. So that was really useful.
I'm not sure how much. I think we ordered 12, I guess 12 or 18 boards, and that is kind of helpful, like having the possibility to order small quantities just to try out the concept, and later we can like develop a board on it, and making it cheaper and those kind of stuff if we have the need for it. Obviously, we have to see what we are gonna do, how many people are interested. Some persons or one person from a university was interested, so we have to see how that turns out. And it's quite exciting.
Another point, A13, being that for those that might be interested in making a board in the Dev Eco server or otherwise, one of the reasons we're sending them is they get shipped unassembled, is then you don't have to go through all of the certifications and certify it as a consumer product. So by keeping a case unassembled, you stay in the dev board kind of product category, limiting your liability and your costs.
Yeah, right. So it's definitely a uncertified developer sample right now.
Also, I'd like to put in that the Dev Eco server is actually a great place to get feedback on your ideas of these things. There are a lot of people um, from it's basically on the hardware development side, more or less focused on ARM, but there are also, even in that space, people that are working on so many different things and have so many different needs that if you are trying to target an audience, that might be like a good place to ask people what they actually need in terms of a dev board. A lot of the times you just see random dev boards pop up that don't really sell all that well, and stuff like that, because they're just made without much research done. So if you have an idea, and you head into the ecosystem server, there are dedicated channels as well. So if you're targeting a specific audience and stuff like that, so good place to research your hardware before you build it.
Yeah. So having that quick feedback loop is actually quite an advantage. Like again, we have added the boot from or the MCC flash functionality and the GPIO header based on feedback from other users. We wouldn't have that if we just like had our own group with no interactions from other people and just build that design and that board. So it helps us making an more interesting board, and it helps the ARM developer community in having or like creating a board with us. So they have a board they want to use and like to use as well. It's not like you can have a choice between a few boards and you can't you have to see which one fits you best. You can have the possibility to actively communicate what you want and what is important for your development cycle.
Right. And to that community also, it really spans the gamut from skill sets. You have people that are newer to the space, and you have professionals like Michael Welling, who's also a member of the community, and also have links into places like GroupGets, where, when you go from, say, 6 to a dozen, and maybe you want to start to approach several dozen or getting into the hundreds, that's a beautiful segue for anyone building boards as well.
Having these people is really great. Like we have people from the software community and from the hardware community, like from really low level software to really high level software, like from kernel development and driver development up to like application development. We have people from companies who like build remote or who build solutions for containerization and remote management of edge devices.
Yeah, and Tor, A13, in the sense of the community, I think, if somebody's just watching this and seeing you for the first time, they might think you're some, programmer or developer at Bosch and so on. Just to underscore that it's an open community, could you just, a little bit to your background and how you came to this?
Oh, well, I watched Sahaj YouTube videos, and then I got I saw 96 boards, got interested in it, and from basically from the 96 board Discord server, I switched over to the developer ecosystem as well, and I'm like managing a bit of it. I'm also admin and try to like keep the server nice and friendly for everybody.
Yes, while pursuing your apprenticeship in electrician in Germany, right?
Yeah, right. And I'm also interested in ARM technology and Linux in my free time. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Right. Do we have questions? It doesn't seem like we have other questions. Sahash, David, do you have something to add?
On my end only, I think if there's interest, we'll come back with another episode and we'll drill
I
down.
mean, like, we are still waiting on the actual boards because of the current situation with the human malware, which delays a bunch of stuff. So we don't have the hardware in our hands yet, but certainly when we have the hardware and created a little ecosystem around our neat little device, we certainly will make another episode.
Yep.
Sahash, do you have anything to add?
Where's my board?
Where's my board?
Well, as far as I know, they are currently in production, so it shouldn't be too long anyway. So I guess we have no comments from the community, and I think we talked.
I have another one.
Oh, another one, right.
Are you planning on selling these boards?
That's a good question.
Yes. Yes. Well, I was just going to say, and go ahead, A13, but I was just going to add into that. Yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, like, right? If we have, or if people have interested, they can always like contact us, and like we can negotiate something.
And you have it on your website, don't you? On UWE Electronics?
No, that's isn't up yet.
Okay. Was there another URL though where you started to discuss it?
No.
Okay. Coming.
It all got delayed by human malware.
Yeah, I think in relation.
Really, I can't wait to have that hardware in my hands.
Yeah, I think in relation to Sahej's question, everybody wants to get through this first run first and make sure it's suitable, because this isn't a product where you're saying we're looking to ship 1 million of them or something like this. This is for developers. It's a little something unique. So
it's not hardware for everybody.
Right, exactly. But
it's targeted towards a very specific developer demographic.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I could certainly see it morphing over to group gets or something like that for the next batch once everybody's confident in it. I mean, people really need to have it in their hands first and collect that feedback. But I think ultimately, we were surprised, quite frankly, as the guys put this together, that we jumped to 18 orders so quickly. And so that kind of means people do find it of use and interesting in our smaller community. So I think once everybody's had a chance to comment and run it through some tests, there would certainly be a version that has more, access to a slightly wider developer community and audience. And we're not doing it for profit or anything. It's just, an item of use, and we're all going through and learning the process of producing something like this, which has just been fascinating.
Yeah, it's quite interesting and something I never done, and it's quite exciting to learn. Like, it was a quite productive quarantine time, I guess.
Yeah.
So, does anybody have questions or something to add? Oh, I have to share like this one. This one was a rendering in like the first design batch, with still sharp edges, and we had the USB OTG port on the side. And again, we got feedback, so we changed it up a bit. Whoops, and it's still on the side, but we now have it on the end, so you can it doesn't block off anything else. Right. I think we can wrap up this episode, and next weekend, maybe at a other time, we have to see. It was my first episode and very experimental. I have to see when I'm going to be live again next week. I'm gonna announce it on Discord, and since I got my 3D printer, I would like to assemble that in a live stream. Right. Thank you all for watching, and that's for today.